Welcome to the Monday Club in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. I'm Neil Loughran, and this week we discuss chaos at Congress and Gaelic football's chasing pack. Okay, I'm joined by Andy Waters and Cahair O'Kane, and we're going to have a look back at a busy weekend on the field and off the field. Andy, you were in Congress on Saturday.
Sure was.
Where the headline news was the anti-alliance protest. Can you give us a wee bit of a feel of what it was like on the floor when that all happened? Because Congress tends to be
sober,
fairly sleepy affair.
Drab.
Yeah.
Any other words?
Everything was livened up at that point. Was this approaching sort of lunchtime-ish or?
Yeah, it was we were just in the middle of the debate on amateur status, and David Hassan had given a very convincing argument about the two motions for that, and then the next thing there was a bit of noise outside in the foyer, and then the doors burst open and a couple of protesters in, alley on side, and up to the top table to confront Jarlath and the GAA top brass. So yeah, it was a bit of drama there, and there's always a bit of drama at Congress, but obviously that's not
what we expected.
It's a very serious issue, and it's not to make light of it.
No, and was there obviously Jarlath Burns spoke to the media afterwards once the protesters had left and stuff, and Peter Canavan has spoken over the weekend, about his feelings. He was with some other former players outside. Was there a tension from earlier? Was there any whisperings of that something like that was going to materialise? Because I don't think any of us were madly surprised that there would be something, given the nature of how the debate hadn't been allowed to take place on the Congress floor.
Yeah, well, when I was going into Congress, the guys at the door were telling me that they'd already turned back 4 people who'd tried to get into the building. So then once, after that, the outside was quiet on Jones's Road, and then the protest started. As you mentioned, Peter Canavan and Brent Devaney, Ross Carr, Colin O'Rourke,
Greg Blaney.
Yeah, Gerard Gilroy, wasn't it, or Pat Gilroy? There's quite a few there, and obviously, legitimately so. But you could hear it outside, and then right in the middle of the amateur status debate, it all burst in. But then the first two came in, and Jarlath was on. Thanks for making your point. Typical Jarlath, diplomacy. Thanks for making your point. You're very welcome, but can you please leave? But then there's another. A few people came in, and they were quite stoked up, I'd say, and calling the delegates, you have blood in your hands, all you have, and all this, and making their point. But I mean, then they broke for lunch, and then when we come back from the lunch, it had all calmed down, So personally, if you're a protester and you want to make your point, well, they made it extremely well. Outside, yes, okay, you get a certain amount of coverage for that, but we're talking about it now, so the goal had to be get in there and really make your point and cause a bit of a scene, which they did, and then they left. And I know there was one lad, an inoffensive lad, at the door, and obviously the door staff at Croke Park aren't like bouncers, they're not jacked like him, but they're and he'd been pushed down.
They wear really tight shirts to look like they're jacked every Monday.
All right, half. Don't you start. We've got a chest. We've got a chest here on show.
We've got a chest here. Whenever I was going out then, at the end of it, the shutters were all down, and there's a guy in behind, the desk, and this other lad came to let me out. He limped along, and he'd been pushed down, and knocked over, So there was obviously a bit of a surge, getting through these things. I'm sure that'd be regrettable for the protesters too, but it's not nice to see,
No, and I suppose that's where Jarlath Burns talks about a line being crossed. That kind of incident, of course, you hope would not happen on a day like that. But Cahair, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and the whole debate revolved around the fact that essentially the conversation had been stymied by the GAA for some time, and that this was going to be the case when it came to the biggest day. You can't. It's hard to argue that the protesters didn't make their mark. You know, as I said, it was the top of the RT news that night. It was the first thing on the agenda when before the Meath Kildare match, when Peter Canavan spoke and so forth. For them, it was a case of job done, case of bringing this to the forefront of public attention for the GAA watching public as much as anything.
Yeah, and it is the difference in standing outside and storming the hall, and as you say,
which the GAA would have been quite happy to facilitate them standing outside all
standing
day.
outside, you're not doing any harm. Nobody's really looking at you. You know, that's the truth. You know, there's no real focus on you other than the delegates coming in past. There's no national exposure. There's nobody outside of the building in Croke Park really sees it.
It's a photo op, and then
you're going. And look, we've seen right up to the very top of this whole war is the wrong word of what's happening in Gaza. The genocide in Gaza is, you know, resolutions at the UN Security Council. And resolutions and more resolutions, and what have any of them achieved? You know, well, the US vetoed that. There you go, that's that done. And it's like that's, you know, forms of protest are useless. You know, that has been a totally useless form of protest, and standing outside, in the sense of this, would have been a totally useless form of protest. But coming into the hall reignited it. It brought it onto the headlines on Saturday night. It made it the talking point for Kildare Meath, as you say. It made, and I have to say, like, I'd have been critical of them and different things. Fair play to RT and to Joanne Cantwell and Peter Canavan for having the conversation on a programme that's sponsored by Allianz and making sort of clear that they were uncomfortable with that situation, but they were contractually obliged. And then Peter Canavan, as he always does, like, spoke so well on his own side of it. It's, look, you can stand out there. They've been standing outside matches, and I think the GAA thought this would have gone away by now. I think they thought we'll get through 2-3 rounds of the league, people will get tired of it, they'll get fed up of it, and the protest will slowly dwindle. And you can see, you know, slowly drip feeding the Alliance board back in behind post-match interviews, and that's starting to happen now. So that, I think that was the process that they thought would happen, that this would quietly go away. And look, it might again.
There's such a strong feeling, I think, about the, you know, obviously number one, Gaza, the whole Palestinian issue, and then obviously this is a serious issue which has sort of brought it home to us, isn't it? Like,
it's as we said at the time, like, it would be credit to the people that have kept, because, you know, you've seen the protests at matches, like, they're quite small in number in terms of the people actually protesting, but what they have is the support of the large majority of the GAA public. So while they're not maybe standing at the gates, they believe in the message that the people standing at the gates are bringing, and so that's powerful in itself. And they just have to find a way to sort of keep it to the forefront and try and draw some sort of not a solution, some sort of an answer from the GAA. And ultimately the GAA caused what happened on Saturday by not having a discussion on the floor. It was now. Firstly, it was opened up. There was a possibility or an opportunity for delegates to do that on Friday night, and that was really disappointing that nobody in the hall spoke about it. And had that conversation got up on Friday night, maybe what happens on Saturday never happens. But ruling the motions from counties out of order and not allowing them to be held on the floor and saying we've gone through your process in terms of dealing with this, they misjudged the mood, they misjudged the temperature of it, and that led to what happened at Congress on Saturday.
And, you know, from the point of view, Andy, of, the media spoke with Jarlath Burns after. And he has come in, you know, and by association, the GAA have, you know, come in for a lot of criticism over how this, the GAA top brass, I should say, about how this situation has been handled. It is I think we all understand the nuances of it and the difficulties around, you know, cutting ties with Allianz or whatever is perceived that needs to happen next. But from the point of view of what Jarlath Burns was saying, he's in a very difficult position with this as well, and has been from the outset, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose you could say like 3 more weekends, and the whole Alliance thing certainly goes into the background, doesn't it? The league's over, and that's it. And then you would imagine that there'll be, behind the scenes like negotiations then before next year or whatever happens. Like, but I don't know. But yes, I suppose Jarlath is. I mean, I would say. Well, he did speak about Donnelly's bar and the shooting there when he was a kid, and how he felt. He knows what it's like to go to bed, scared of being shot, or he knows what it's like to have like troops on the streets, and and all that. He would certainly see himself solid and
sympathetic, of
or
course, to
in
the
solidarity with
Palestinian
the
cause.
Palestinian plight, etc.
But when you're the figurehead, that's the problem, isn't it? That
It
that
is
you
exactly.
represent.
You don't have the luxury of saying, right, they should do this, they should do that, because you're there, you're the man, you're the man, the captain of the ship. I mean, I don't know. What was it? 8.3 million.
8.7 million in sponsorship the GAA brought in.
That's not just from Allianz. Yes,
No, that's from all their sponsors, like for their league and champion. And when you boil that down, like when you take whatever 5, 6, 7 sponsors, you're talking. We don't know figures, like, but you're talking in the realms of $1 million to a couple of million. Like it's not end of the world stuff. If you lose that, and go back to the point I made a few weeks ago in terms of the insurance underwriting, that's a different element that Allianz bring, but. There's kind of this nearly notion out there that if Allianz leaves, the GAA are going to be 50 million short next year, which is just not anywhere close to the truth.
Yeah, but I don't, at the same time, right, well, obviously this is not sort of getting, pro or con or against any argument. Like the FAA have had a lot of problems getting sponsorship in for the Ireland, men's team, like. So I don't know if there's like buckets of money.
But is that also
the public
but the basket case that the FAA have been themselves? They've been a complete mess.
It probably doesn't help, and they're not making European championships, and they're not making World Cups and stuff like that there. But at the same time, I think it's an indication that there's not loads of money. There aren't people just falling over themselves to throw money at Irish sport, perhaps. And like, there's what 375 full-time coaches, in the GAA that the GAA employs. How many of them are paid for by what the money that Allianz brings in? I'm just trying to see it from the sort of the GAA hierarchy point of view, like But I think, as Peter Canavan rightly said, you can't.
The commercial concern can only be
and
so far.
You can't, when you're looking at those figures of a couple of million out of 140, 150 million revenue, like you're talking about cutting the corner off the tablecloth. You're not talking about cutting a hole in the middle of it. Like, you can make it fit. You can work without the corner of the tablecloth.
Yeah, so
that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. Maybe in your house.
Maybe we don't have a tablecloth. You can work without those couple of million. You could survive. As say, if it was a massive sum of money, then you would say, right, there's a real financial consideration. There's ways and means for the GAA revenues kind of grow year on year. Anyway, there's a good chance.
Don't you think? I'm sorry to come in. Don't you think if you could do that, they would have done that?
I don't know that
or they will do that. Put it like that.
I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it by now, and that's probably the disappointment. Like there's very little precedent out there. Like you look for examples. You had the Indian Premier League dropped Vivo in 2020 when China and India were at each other's throats, and like they were able to drop that sponsorship because they felt strongly enough about it that they basically seem to pull Vivo in and say, this is good for everybody if we just sort of can this for now. Even though they returned in the aftermath when things settled down again, it was just the fact that they were Chinese based and the Indian Premier League didn't sit well with the people. And it's that thing again. We talked about the FAA and obviously this Nations League game with Israel that's coming up, and like them misjudging the temperature as well around that, and they were straight out with a statement, we're going to play the game, and it's put the players in an awkward position. The bit that I sort of baffles me is that it's a home game and they're almost happy to concede home advantage. instead of making a point. But it's like anything. Ireland has stood up in a way that other countries haven't, even though there would be a lot of people here would say they still haven't done anywhere near enough on it, and they made up a point. But there are a lot of other countries have done absolutely nothing, and Ireland don't want to go out on a limb and say, well, we're not playing, and for everybody else to abandon them, and then Ireland get punished for it. Whereas what you would want is the snowball effect of Ireland saying, no, we're not playing, and 3 or 4 countries or 5 countries come behind them and say, well, we're not playing them either. And if that happened,
or UEFA stepping in.
well, that's what should happen.
Yeah.
Like, they shouldn't be playing. That's the bottom line. They shouldn't be like, we don't need to go into the whole Russia thing, but like the fact Russia have been banned from international sports and Israel hasn't is bizarre. But I suppose you could understand it doesn't take a genius to work out why, but it's just.
But I mean, there is a precedent there in sporting terms, because from an Irish sporting sense, because Irish boxing did refuse to compete in competitions that their members voted to not compete in competitions where Russian athletes were allowed to enter. This is going back obviously
Yeah,
two
and
or
that's
3
tough
years now.
that's tough on the individual. That's tough on the boxers.
Absolutely,
and
sometimes just sorry to this was a situation where they might have entered, but if they were drawn against a Russian national, they would then have withdrawn. Which you were seeing this for like under 18 boxers and stuff who maybe don't get the global sense of what's going
and ultimately
on.
they're the people who, and it's the same as Ireland pulling out of the game against Israel, because it's unlikely that UEFA would do anything other than punish Ireland. It's Ireland who feel it has no impact. It's not going to change anything about Israel playing. It's not going to change anything about what they're doing in Gaza. So it's like it becomes so why would we do this? And like you'd love to see them do it on one point, but you can understand from a sporting point of view why they probably are looking at it and saying this is pointless unless we can get 5 or 6 countries to come with us and force UEFA's hand and put Israel out of football. What are we doing it for? And it's maybe them trying hard enough to do that side of it. Can they gather up support from other countries to do it? That's
well, it could happen yet, because obviously the whole situation in the Middle East, isn't it? It's a political show here, but it's escalating over the weekend, isn't it? So
I think all bets are off.
Yeah.
At the minute in that sense. Like, but just on Allianz and again, I'm conscious that we did talk at length about different aspects of this a few weeks ago. In terms of where we go, where this debate goes from here, because Andy says that the league finishes in a couple of weeks. The commitment to Allianz, for this year effectively ends at that point from a public perspective. But the figures that you guys have discussed there, that the GAA is bringing in for sponsorship. I said here a couple of weeks ago, there's bound to be companies knocking down the door, but probably what we're saying here is that picture has probably changed. I look at the impact that even I'll go back to boxing. Like boxing for years, despite being like Ireland's most successful Olympic sport, was a toxic brand to a lot of companies, for years, because they hung their dirty washing out in public and so forth. And just, I wonder how much these big multinational companies care, or what they are they sort of looking at the GAA and going, well, that's a very vocal membership, whether they're right or wrong, in their eyes, they might not, but they might just think, why do we need any part in that? Or what's to be gained from that? I'm playing devil's advocate to a degree, but do you think there might be some element of, like, we might expect that there'd be loads of companies knocking down the GAA's door, but some of them might be looking at it, the really big ones going,
well, the multinational companies,
which is obviously the market.
Possibly,
that
I mean, there's massive interest in the GAA, on the island of Ireland. Outside that, America, Australia, bits and bobs, but we're not on Sky Sports anymore, for example, so you maybe don't have that sort of worldwide draw there. The point that you're making,
dodgy boxes everywhere though.
You get a sponsorship with them.
It is, but when you look at individual counties, I mean they're not pulling in in the vast majority of cases, like they're local. They're local companies that are sponsoring them, aren't they? It's not a wash with
Yes, outside of
money.
like Cork and Dublin, maybe, you know, who can attract the, you know,
Yeah,
bigger.
And like you look at you know, the parts of the country, there's large pharmaceutical industry, but like, is the pharmaceutical industry any better? In some, you know, in some ways, price gouging and hiking, you know, you read some of the stuff around that as well, and so it's like, you know, there's very little clean money in the world. If you go down, you know, if you drill down, and like at the end of the day, Allianz sat sort of quietly for 30 years as GAA sponsor, and nobody really minded. It was only when things happened, and then they purchased the government bonds, the £1 billion of government bonds. So that was the catalyst for this protest. But it's, where is any company's money invested? Where is it going? What has it been used for in the background? We don't know in the vast majority of cases. It was only really the UN report that sort of highlighted Allianz. Other than that, you know, people wouldn't really have known. And so, but there has to be a line as well. I suppose it's
well, that's,
when
I mean,
you
that's
do know
been a
that
theme throughout this debate is the skeletons that might lie in the cupboards of thousands of companies across, you know, that are involved with different sporting
100%. And like I think somebody said at Congress, like about, you know, America now involved in this violence. I mean, do we start into American companies next or whatever? But I think you can say yes, sure, they're all at it. But you know, you have to start somewhere, don't you? I mean, you have to take a stand on something.
And you're right. Like, and I like, there has to be a line somewhere, and Allianz are over the line, you know, in terms of exactly what they have done and how they did it and when they did it, you know. And for the GAA to be involved with that, we've kind of said it from day one, like the GAA to be involved with that is not good. It's not something they should.
Not representative.
No, it's not something they should be associated with, and they should try harder to pull Allianz into the room and go back to that example and say, look, this is not working for us. We don't think it's working for you either, because you're getting a hammering, and it's not good for your brand in Ireland. You know, I don't understand. I personally don't understand why Allianz are still there. What they're gaining, why they don't just leave. So, you know, I think with a wee bit of a push, the contractual obligation is there to 2030. I think if they tried hard enough, I don't think it would be too hard to break it at this point.
Okay, and before we move on, one other matter at Congress, Andy, was the death knell for the extension of the season for 2 weeks, making one man in Derry particularly happy, and dare I say plenty of other people across the country, and it was interesting to watch, I suppose, in the last number of weeks, just how that movement, or because it probably was expected that it was going to be pretty close, and it came to the point where ultimately it was withdrawn, didn't even go to the floor.
No, I think one of the delegates, I think the Galway delegate, did want it to go to the floor, because then if it goes to the floor, there's a vote. Then it can't come back. But it was withdrawn. So there was no real support for it whatsoever. Porrick Duffy got up to introduce it, and he just said, like, I think I'm going to take a bit in here. A bit like Pat Flanagan, who introduced the motion about moving the minor finals back to before the All Ireland finals. So it sort of fell flat on its face, didn't it? There just was no support for it.
Cahair, do you expect that as Andy said now, the fact that it was withdrawn and not debated, does it allow a window for it to return in a whatever different form in years to come? Is that something you expect? Do you think that was obviously a tactical move, I guess, and is that something you expect will happen in the years to come, or will they listen to the message that has been pretty loud and clear the last few weeks?
I think it's twofold in terms of why they did it. Like, one is that it protects the motion again to go forward. Yep, no doubt about it. The other is that I think they wanted to protect Porrick Duffy in the sense of having asked him to draw up this committee, and he was going to take a hammering. Like, I had conversations throughout the week, and like got around about 24, 25 counties by Friday, and I hadn't found a single county that was voting for it.
Porrick was asking me for your number, actually.
You were talking, like,
I gave it to him.
There was a good chance that nobody was going to vote for this thing at all, and it was going to bottom out at 20%, and that would have killed it stone dead. I think in the sense of the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's dead anyway. I don't think that can come back and win. Now, given the debate that grew up around it, given the points that were made on those, and those will remain relevant then in the years to come, and the counties will look at it again. What would change next year? The big thing for a lot of counties as well was that it was tied to the pre-season competitions, and there were counties that I was surprised in Leinster that were against it only on the basis that it was tied to the O'Byrne Cup, and they wanted the O'Byrne Cup to stay. Now, they were lower end counties, and they were saying, like, we'll not get challenge games. We're a Division 4, bottom end Division 3 county. If we don't have an O'Byrne Cup, we're going to really struggle to get games near hand.
Yeah, but it's revenue as well.
Absolutely, there's a revenue thing as well. But it was, for them, I was surprised, but it was a good point. Like, it was more, we can't get anybody to play us because we're a Division 4 team. We can only really play the teams in our league. We're playing them again in 3 weeks' time, and we maybe have to drive 2/3 of the way across the country to play a challenge game in January. It's a costly venture. So there's that side of it, and there were counties who would have voted for it had it just been the August All-Ireland finals on their own. But at the same time, I still don't think there was anywhere near enough counties that would have voted for it. So I think it's dead in terms of August All-Ireland finals. Thank God for the next 3 or 4 years. And beyond that, you never know what will happen. I'm sure there'll be a push again at some point. But the points will remain the points.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, after his infamous, by now infamous piggery comment, I see there was Armagh fans with pig masks.
Were there?
In Castlebar yesterday.
Brilliant.
From Tigger to piggery, we've come full circle. But as part of that same, I don't want to call it a speech, but whenever he was talking to us after the Roscommon game, Kieran McGinney did say, when talking about the rules, and I suppose we're still a year down the line, and how teams are evolving with that, he mentioned that it had brought a lot of counties, or some counties, back into the mix who were otherwise not contending at All Ireland level, and we were going to have a look at what the order is. I guess if we accept at the minute anyway, Kerry and Donegal being, at the top, probably ahead of the chasing pack at the minute, but looking below, and how that has changed. Now, we kind of set this up to talk, when we were going to talk about the likes of Cork and Roscommon and all, and they all got chinned at the weekend. But Meath would be the obvious, and that's who I sort of took that McGeaney was maybe talking about when he said that, because obviously 3 years ago Meath were playing Tailteann Cup football. Now you look at them; they were in the All Ireland semi-final last year,
Got stuffed.
and they got stuffed, but they're flying in Division 2 this year, and they have on the face of it, when you look at what you might perceive to be the raw materials to make the rules pay for you, they seem to have a lot of that at their disposal. Is that fair to say?
I'm really impressed, I have to say. Even their development from last year to this year, and I know they're playing Division 2, but there's parts of their game. Like, I was at their first round game against Derry. I watched a lot of their game against Cork, which they actually lost, and then watched them on Saturday evening against Kildare. And the thing that strikes me is they're really well organised in terms of a lot of the things they're doing. Their own kickouts are, they're very, very good on them. They know what they're doing. There's no sort of lefty chance here. Like, they're in certain pockets. The left-footed goalkeeper in
But
there.
sure, it's just
piggery.
Sure, it's just a
yeah,
feint.
and
You can't be good at it.
there was plenty good about Meath's kickouts now at the weekend. Brennan is lovely kicker of a ball, and they're set up in particular pockets for a short, and then they're set up in different pockets for a long ball, and they're organised, And then I think when they got to the point of the All-Ireland semi-final last year, they were just so reliant on 2-pointers, and obviously Donegal squeezed the life out of that. They were so reliant on Jordan Morris for a lot of it. Brent McCall went on him, kept him quiet, and it kind of did collapse a wee bit. I think they're a lot less reliant on 2-pointers at the minute. They're looking more about ones. They've a load of pace in their game, and obviously the introduction of the big man in the middle of the field has made or the reintroduction of him in the middle of the field, Jack Flynn, has been
Talking
massive.
about 2-pointers, I was down at the Louth Meath game in Croke Park a couple of weeks ago. One of the games of the season, certainly, the second half. Louth, what was Louth, 12 points down, come back to lead by a point, and he sank them with an absolutely magnificent 2-pointer.
Yeah.
But what Cahair said, that whole eastern seaboard, isn't it? Like there's so much growth and development, isn't there? Down,
What are they feeding them?
huh?
What are they feeding them?
They're big lads.
Louth are coming through as well. Tyrone sort of got panned last week, for losing an RD, but Louth are not an easy touch now. Obviously, the Leinster champions last year, massive population, bringing them through so much hard work going on, and they're going to progress, and underage level as well. They've got that whole platform to build on too. So
Really impressed with Louth as well. I have to say, I actually think that Gavin Devlin, you'll have seen their goal at the weekend, like the 3 kick passes, like from the keeper to Sam O'Roy inside. Was
I
it
did
3?
see a lot of people saying that would never happen in Division 1.
Never well, I don't know. I think you're looking at teams maybe not looking for it. The fear of giving the ball away is just that wee bit.
So much space.
Is that he was in a lot of space? Yeah, he was, but he was only just over halfway in terms of staying in the 3 ups. You have a lot of space there. If you a lot of the time you'll find when teams turn the ball over like that, their 3 up aren't looking for a kick pass.
Yeah.
That's not their instinct because they know the ball's not going to be kicked, so they're getting into a different position. Whereas Louth and like Gavin Devlin, the Tyrone boys would still speak so highly of the work that he and Stephen O'Neill did around their kicking game at different stages under Mickey Hart, and Gavin Devlin, I have to say, has sort of proven himself consistently.
You could see it with Marfell coming through the
Marfell were brilliant last year up until the final.
Yeah.
It probably Newbridge did really well in certain things in the final. Marfell played brilliant football up to the final, but it's the what's the word? The difference in their player. I can't think of the word for a wee second. I've lost myself.
The evolution a wee bit. Do you mean or the variation? Sorry,
variation.
Yeah.
How could I not get that word? I couldn't. The variation in their play. They're like Louth have probably been a running team, and under Gavin Devlin and Mickey Hart the first time were very much a running team, but they have developed a lot. I think they're already looking like a better team than the team that won Leinster last year. May look like a better team than the team that beat Dublin, went to the Leinster final, ended up in All-Ireland semi-final, beat Cahair. So for the first time in a long, long time, Leinster looks actually
really
competitive, because
Yeah.
Kildare, they've wobbled and they're very young, and there probably was going to be a wobble, but they started really well under Brian Flanagan, but they're still capable as well on their day of scalping one of the other couples. So for the first time, it does feel like you might have.
We have said that about Kildare though down the years, haven't they? Like they have sort of flattered to deceive, and I hope, hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, and
whatever,
probably. I'm conscious as well. As I mentioned, Roscommon at the start there, and Roscommon this time last week were, the big news. And
somebody shouted to me, was it something on Friday night? Oh, Roscommon for Sam, an Armagh supporter, and then
were they being serious? I'm not saying they shouldn't have been, but
Yeah.
they were.
I don't know how
Which
many
bar were you on?
But no, I watched them against Armagh a few weeks ago, and have watched them a couple of times during the league before that, and they were really, really impressive. But and again,
it's the league though, isn't it?
It is, and
let's not forget.
that's why you have to preface everything with
this time 3 years ago, Derry were motoring so well. Now you don't. Give me dirty looks.
Look at them now. They're back.
Well, they're on the way back up, aren't they? They're certainly this year's Monaghan, aren't they? So
Yeah.
that's with all due respect to Monaghan.
Of course, yeah.
Roscommon, you rarely go through the league without one real bad performance. Almost every team will have a real bad day out at some point in the National League. You can almost put your hat on it. Roscommon's was yesterday, but it just felt like even watching Ger Brennan on the sideline, like he was so vocal and animated, and really literally coaching the team second by second on top of everything that they were doing. And Dublin had that furious energy about them in the first half where they battered Roscommon physically. They just went so high and their press, and they just went right after them. Dublin had the wind, and they just says, we're not letting these boys out. They are not coming out of their own half without a fight. And what was it, 14-0?
It was a complete docket buster, wasn't it? You know, no Con O'Callaghan.
Everybody was,
and you know, they go and do that. You know, so I mean,
And it was pure. And you know, again, it's. I think Croke Park doesn't really suit Dublin for their league games at the minute. You know, they would probably be better playing their games in Parnell Park. Like I was writing at the weekend about Cork moving out of Páirc Uí Chaoimh and taking the Kildare game on the Páirc Uí Rinn. And Páirc Uí Rinn was a big factor in their win over Meath. I think Dublin would benefit from a few games away out of Croke Park and see that energy. See if that energy had been matched by then a full house in Parnell Park, getting in on top and behind the team. Like that could actually invigorate that team. And they just brought so much good to the first half that we probably had. They looked like a, I'm not saying they haven't been, they looked like a modest team on Saturday. As in they didn't believe that they were anywhere up in the stratosphere. They believed that they had to work like dogs to beat Roscommon, and that was what they did. I was so impressed with their work rate. Like they were phenomenal at times on that side of it. And like if that Dublin can bring itself to the summer and find that energy, like
similar last year when the big goal in Salt Hill, they weren't expected to. They were, few, you know, it was Kieran Kilkenny.
And similar idea.
The way, didn't they? Like, you know, absolute manic determination. Like, so.
And it's just harder to generate. It's a wee bit harder to generate in an empty Croke Park. It's just like it's spread out. It's empty. It's soulless a wee bit. Like, and you know, when the place is full and rocking for Dublin, it's a different place. But they're not getting that at the minute. For well, certainly for any league game or anything close to what was 20,000 at Dublin Kerry last week. So you know, they're not going to do it at this point.
Still too big for Parnell Park, that isn't it?
Aye, look,
especially with Armagh coming the next one,
and they're tied to their home games. They're doubled up with Meath a lot of the time during the league, and nearly trying to fill it a wee bit with double headers. But I just think in general, there's a lot to be said for a smaller ground. Like even Tyrone going to Dungannon on Saturday evening. There was it wasn't a big crowd, but it felt bigger than it would have in Omagh, and there was a wee bit of a noise out of the stand. And I think that in Omagh, like Tyrone could have really struggled. Only Offaly's kick out completely malfunctioned after half time. They were Offaly were doing pretty well when they got their hands on the ball. They were hurting Tyrone. But they just couldn't buy a way, even with, you know, Offaly had the breeze in the second half, and it was as if they felt that they could go a bit longer, and the longer they went, the more played into Tyrone's hands instead of, and they couldn't find ways out. But the difference that I think would make to Tyrone to go into Dungannon at the minute as well, with the way things are there, they would be far better served going there. They have Cork on the last day. I would. If I was Tyrone and we needed points, I'd be moving that game. I'd be playing that game
to go up,
and to stay up.
or to stay up.
Well, I think they'll be okay now. But
Cahair's fan club in Omagh grows another day.
What's it at now?
Yeah, must be up to 3 now. So,
where they live in the outskirts. They live in Kellyclar.
Mandy, just on the piggery thing has got, you know, a good earn, and he was asked about it again yesterday and what it means and stuff. But I wonder, just, you know, we're talking about teams that have maybe changed and you know, used the new rules to their advantage. But do you buy this notion that, like, there is no skill? You know, that's the way it's been presented, as if like it is just, you know, we've heard from McGeaney, heard from Niall Morgan last week and stuff. You know, as in the ball is just being lumped up, and then it's all you have to do. Like, surely there has to be. I can't believe that there's not a skill in break ball, in reading the game, in high fielding. You know what I mean? But
well, I think I'm looking at it from a different perspective than a county manager or even a goalkeeper. Like, just as a fan, like I think it's a much better spectacle. Like, you know, I like that. Like that we're not, like, everything's not mapped out, and, you know.
But is it a big ignorant kind of, you know, free for all in the middle?
Well, it is. It's just a contest now. Like, a lot of times now, you're just seeing the balls walloped up the field, high and long, and, you know, the guys just go for it. Like, if you've got decent big midfielders, like they're still going to win clean ball, like, but a lot of it is like break ball, and I mean the product that there is now, like we're talking about, like all the even Armagh again yesterday, like like the 10 points down at one stage, they get beat by a point again. There's so the games are brilliant, the contests are going right to the wire all the time. So there is that element now where it's like in the lap of the gods. I do like that, like and that's probably where I differ from the sort of the GAA.
The managers, because it's the whole thing that we've talked about since the very beginning of the rules, is the control element that has gone out of this, and that's probably what managers are missing. The fact that you're essentially saying, okay, let's see how this, you're rolling the dice.
After the Armagh game last week, Jim McGuinness literally said it. He said, like, managers want more control. Those are the words he used. Managers want to be involved in something they can control, and that is their whole issue with the kick out. You're 100%, like, it's far better to watch, and there's a lot of opposition to the arc in terms of the kick outs having to travel that distance. Can we not bring it back to the D? But you bring it back to the D. Goalkeepers are so proficient at popping off those wee, like, they're, what is to the arc? It's 13 metres, or sorry, to the small D. Like, every goalkeeper in Ireland, right down to the bottom level, could pretty much do that, and was doing that, and that was why the game then you had the knock-on effect of teams dropping off because it wasn't worth chasing, and what you have now is a far better spectacle. Because
because we went through years of nobody wanting the ball. Then it was short kickouts. Like, it was done to death, I think, wasn't it? Like, it's just a refreshing change.
It was so easy to get out.
Yeah.
You couldn't close the short kick out in, basically, because, and then when it, they tried to put in a rule to stop it going straight back to the goalkeeper, and teams just started to run a loop man around, take the second ball, and then he'd give it back to the goalkeeper. So there was always ways round those things. But in terms of the piggery, like, Armagh and Donegal were kind of the two, I think I've said this before, like, were the two teams that were out on their own last year in terms of really trying all year to place kickouts and trying not to go to the big overload where they just put 8 men on one side of the field and lump it out at them. And Armagh against Kerry and Donegal against Monaghan both found the follies in that system and have both abandoned it and are both just full overload now. And I think obviously they have looked at the danger of going the other way and getting it wrong, and have decided, look, it's just safer to kick it out 50-50 and hope. And within that, you're talking about skill. There's definitely a skill in winning the breaking ball. There's probably less skill in it now in terms of it's very hard to even time a run onto a break because you just have to be so close beneath the catchers because there's so many men in there that if you're not there, you don't actually have the space to attack. So it probably is difficult to say that there is a huge pile of skill. The most of what's happening is the wrestling. When the ball's in the air, who's the strongest man, who can hold their ground and get their feet set and get their position, because there are very few men able to attack those balls with a jump now because there's so many bodies in there. You can't get a run to get a jump, so you're nearly taking it, your feet are standing and you're just trying to get hands on it to direct it. And so there probably is a lack of skill in it, there probably is, but it's still worth it.
You want that physical, a personal view, like, you want that physical contest. It can't just be a chess match all the time because it's not nearly as good to watch.
And you're talking about big momentum swings, but it gives teams the opportunity to chase leads, and that is the single biggest thing that I have found in terms of what has changed in football. And you can talk about kickouts and this. The biggest thing that's changed is the mindset of coaching. Is that for years, and particularly we're talking about Meath and Roscommon and teams. I'm not saying any one particular team was a certain way, but there was a mindset of underdogs of let's just go out and keep it as tight as we can. Damage limitation all the time. We'll try and beat them 6-5 if we can, and that would inevitably fail. Now that mindset doesn't exist. You to win any game at that level, you're looking at 17, 18, 19, 20, far more points again. So the only way you can win it is to score 20 points. So how do you score 20 points? You need to get 30 plus shots. How do you get 30 plus shots? You need to attack fast. And so the whole mindset has flipped, and it's now almost an admission among teams that defensively there's not a huge pile you can do. So is all the work going in on that side, where it was for years? Like, it was, the defensive work was primary in training sessions. Now it's probably secondary. Now it's how do we score? How do we break teams down? How do we
kicking the ball, like,
and that is brilliant. Like
more and more and more. I think like Ger Brennan there a couple of weeks ago was talking about Dublin club football and getting what he wants to see clubs kicking the ball now. A lot more. So I think as this continues, you'll see more and more of that.
And it's one thing, we're up in goals at the minute. We're well up in goals in Division 1. We're up to 48 so far this year. 48, I think it is. 37 this time last year. And even the 37 figure last year was a bit of a cod, because there was one round where there was 13, but you had rounds of 3 and 3 and 7 and 7, I think, with the others. This year, every week, you're hitting 10, 11, 12. So I think it dipped this week a wee bit to 7.
So the notion that the 2-pointer had kind of taken that.
But the 2-pointer was always going to then, because teams then became so scared of the 2-pointer defensively, and then it was the point of the 2-pointer that they would then squeeze out, and then there was more space in behind, and that would create goal chances, and that is kind of following through what is actually happening. So like that's all good, because you want to see goals too. Like we're seeing lots of them at the minute. It's great.
Yeah, like Conor O'Donnell yesterday, what a goal! Like you're seeing that space. Like, isn't it for him to exploit? If he's got the pace, you just go. Like
his goal against Armagh as well. Like that was kind of the primary example in terms of, like, I thought Armagh for 3 minutes would defended that situation brilliantly. Like no Donegal player could get on their stronger foot to have a shot. Armagh were so well versed in it, when they step in and when they step off, in terms of what foot everybody was soloing or going to kick with, and Donegal couldn't break it. But Conor O'Donnell's pace, one run, and he just broke the line and got the goal, because they were nearly so focused around the arc that once he broke that line, just a straight run to goal. And so that is what you're getting. You're getting now the balance. The 2-pointers aren't going up that much. They're going up a bit, but they're not dominating. And we're seeing more goals, and like Armagh kicking ones for fun, even though a lot of focus on losing games and not scoring goals, but they're kicking more ones than anybody, and they're creating more shots than anybody.
What is it, like 80 individual scores, like maybe more Armagh haven't they? I mean, they're right up there. And obviously, like they've been losing games by a point, but
very few 2-pointers.
Will turn at some stage. You'd have to think. They're coming so close with a lot of goal chances and stuff. Like so.
There was that Stats and Solos website, they have a wee map of every county and what they've sort of been relying on with their balance of 1-pointers, 2-pointers and goals. And like Armagh's was by far and away the most heavily reliant on 1-pointers, but it was partly because they were kicking so many 1-pointers that it was nearly skewing the numbers a wee bit. And they're still going for twos. They're not getting them. They're missing the goal chances. So that's kind of, but they're creating goal chances. So I think I said, I think they'd be worried if they go down in some ways, but I think performance-wise, I still don't think they're huge. Attacking-wise, they're not a million miles away. It's probably defensively they're conceding too much at the moment.
They're missing Barry McCambridge and Aaron Mackay and guys like that still.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that'll do us for this week. Thank you very much to Andy Waters and Cahair O'Kane.
Thanks, Hoff.
Another Monday Club comes to an end. Yeah,
some people.
Thank you very much also to our sponsor, Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or watch this podcast, and we will be back for more next week.